Hey guys, welcome to part one of the Renaissance lecture series, chapter 13.1 and 13.2, Origins of the Renaissance. Make sure you have your Cornell note stuff ready. You need paper, highlighters, and a pencil or a pen. Go ahead and get that EQ down. Describe the origins of the Renaissance, including how and why the Renaissance started and how it grew over time. If you need more time to get down the title and your EQ, go ahead and pause here because I am moving on. The first thing you need to understand is how feudalism ends. Okay, guys, we've been talking about this all year long. All right, you have about 1,000-year period that makes up the Middle Ages from when the Rome fell to about 1,000 years later. So you're looking at the 1400s when the medieval period is going to end. And that's what we're looking at right now. We're on that cusp, okay? Feudalism is going to end. The Middle Ages is coming to an end, and we're going to go into the next era of history, which is known as the Renaissance throughout Europe. Okay, so why does feudalism end? These are things we've been studying about in class. One of the reasons why it ends is because of the peasant revolt. All right, peasants have been fighting for a long time for more rights, and slowly but surely over the years, it's taken a long time, but slowly they've been able to get more and more rights, especially after the Magna Carta was signed, which we have talked about in class. Okay, so King John signed that, remember, and that gives everyone the right to trial by jury as well as a lot of other rights. The plague. When the plague hits and you have Black Death, depending on what part of Europe you're talking about, as much as 50% of the population in some parts of Europe were wiped out. And so there's less people to do the same amount of work that needed to be done, but there's less of them to do it. So now they can do something that they had never been able to do before. They can demand a wage and they can shop around. Maybe one lord of a manor is only willing to offer X amount, but if they go a few manors over, that lord is willing to offer more. And because of that, they're not tied to the land anymore. They can get up and move from manor to manor and work wherever they're going to get the best rights and the best wages. So the plague has made a more equal working environment possible. Kings are gaining power, as we've been talking about over time. Again, this is all happening over time. Over time, people are moving more and more into towns and cities again. And as they're leaving the countryside, they're leaving manors, and they're moving back into the towns, kings gain more and more power. And so that's also helping feudalism to die out. Then, of course, there were the Crusades. War is sometimes good for the economy. It stimulates things to happen, such as trade in this case. Trade really picks up because of the Crusades. We get contact with other cultures again, cultures in the East, like the Middle East and Asian cultures, and we want to continue trade with them. And so the trade business is starting to thrive again. And because of all of those things, like I was already saying, towns grow. And so that all together creates stability throughout Europe. And because of that, there's no more need for everyone to move on to the countryside manor with knights protecting them and not really moving around or trading or ever traveling. We have a much safer Europe, not that it's completely safe, but a safer Europe than it used to be. And knights kind of fall out of favor as the warrior class, and towns start to grow and things start to flourish. Trade picks up again, the economy picks up again, and all of this working together ends up bringing feudalism to an end. If you need more time on this slide, push pause because here we go. Okay, so we get to the Renaissance beginning. First of all, what is the Renaissance? The Renaissance is a French word. Renaissance is a French word that means rebirth. Okay, the Renaissance is a period of time in Italy and then spreads from Italy throughout the rest of Europe from around the late 1300s into the 1600s or so. Renaissance means rebirth. This is a time where people who have actually lived through the Black Death, who have lived through all this war, the 100 Years' War, the Crusades, okay? People who have lived through really hard, trying times are looking back at their lives and saying, we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate life. We've made it through all of this hardship, and we need to look at what is beautiful and be appreciative of what's around us. And so it's almost like a rebirth in culture. People are going to start wanting to focus on education again and the arts again and architecture again and being excited about the things that are around them and grateful for, each and and every day that they're alive. So the Renaissance becomes this golden age of learning. People are passionate again about learning after a really long time of most people not being educated. There's growth in the arts and in literature and in human achievements and growth of cities and trades, as we've been talking about. The Renaissance begins in the Florence area, which is in southern Italy, and then over time spreads more and more northward throughout Europe as time goes on. Again, it's about a 300 or so year period of time. Some people mark the beginning of the Renaissance in year 1401, when an artist designed the Gates of Paradise, Lorenzo Ghiberti, which are doors that are on a church in Florence, Italy. But some people feel like Renaissance ideas had already started spreading decades before then. So we're going to say, for the purposes of our class, the Renaissance started in the late 1300s or so and goes through well into the mid 1600s. Okay, so it's a rebirth, okay, a reanalyzing of classical art from Roman and Greco periods from Greece, and as well as new styles and new ways of thinking. Okay, if you need more time on this slide, then please push pause, because here we go. All right, so how does it get its start? Well, there's a lot of things that kind of come together right at the magical moment to end up making the Renaissance be as big as it was. And one of the big things that helps the Renaissance movement grow is trade. Okay, so you've got the Crusades that had happened and other means of things going on, that trade starts to increase. And as trade increases, people throughout Europe are getting obsessed with all these different Middle Eastern and Asian goods that have become available to them. And it really makes trade a hot commodity. Everybody's into trade. And as trade grows, it's going to change the methods of communication throughout Europe, right? Because remember, when you trade, you're not just trading the physical items, your bananas for apples or whatever it is you're trading, okay? You're trading ideas, you're trading languages, you're trading religions, you're trading germs and disease, okay? There's a lot more that goes with it as you're interacting with people and you learn about their culture and their music and their fashion and all these things than just the actual trade items. So methods of communication change over time as everybody's interacting with each other. Because all the invasions and a lot of the wars and stuff have come to an end, it's safer to travel and it's easier to trade. So this leads to a huge explosion of different kinds of ideas and an interaction of cultures blending and stuff throughout Europe as all these trade routes are getting established. And another thing that happens is that European exposure to a lot of the Arab achievements that have been happening down in the Middle East start to grow throughout Europe. And we start adopting some of the Middle Eastern ideas. For example, our number system we use now is the Arabic number system, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. They switched from Roman numerals to the Arabic number system in the beginning stages of the Renaissance. And we get lots of other ideas and stuff from what the Middle East had already discovered or had been doing for quite a while. Because remember, while we were having the Dark Ages in Europe, okay, the Middle East had already been having a golden age. So there's a lot of stuff that we're able to bring over from Europe or from the Middle East to Europe and learn from them. All right, if you need more time in this slide, then push pause because you want to get all that trade stuff down. Otherwise, here we go. Okay, another thing that happens is that there is a rise of the merchant class. Obviously, with trade, you're going to have the traders, people that are doing the trading, and those people are the merchants. With all this trade happening, they're getting wealthier and wealthier. And businesses are starting to grow and flourish. And as that happens, Italy is kind of a natural place for this to take place. They're right smack, have great access to the Mediterranean Sea, which helps them become this huge trading hub. And so as Italian city-states grow throughout Italy, especially in southern Italy, and they grow really rich and prosperous from the trade business. All this surplus of all this extra wealth that's happening because trade is so good leads merchant families like the Medicis and other famous Italian families to give money to the arts. So it leads to the rise of artistic patronage, which is giving money to artistic endeavors, paying for paintings and statues and beautification of cities and museums to be built and libraries to be built and architectural designs and stuff for building beautification and all different types of artistic type things to give money towards those causes. And all of that causes art to flourish, which of course leads more and more artists to want to move to Italy to be part of where all of the action is happening in the art world. Okay, if you're not ready yet, push pause because here we go. Another key foundation of the Renaissance growing as big as it did was the quest for knowledge. During the Renaissance period, everyone has this questioning spirit, and it kind of took place because of what happened with the Black Death. When the plague comes along and everyone starts questioning the Catholic Church, why is this happening to us? What did we do wrong? How come God isn't saving us? It really caused people to start wanting concrete proof for their answers. And some people even walk away from their Catholic faith because of the plague and what had happened. And so there's this overall sense during the beginning of the Renaissance and going into the Renaissance about questioning everything, wanting proof and explanations and reasonings for everything, wanting answers for anything you're curious about. Nothing is taken for granted. Any old beliefs that anyone had were re-examined, and why is it the way that it is, and does this really make sense, and does this work for today's culture? And so that questioning spirit, part of that is wanting to be educated, so you had the answers. And so an interest in education really grows as everyone has that questioning spirit, along with the fact that all these new trade goods and ideas and stuff are coming up from Asian cultures and the Middle East. That gets people's curiosity up too, and wanting more interest in education for themselves. So a lot of emphasis on education starts happening over a short period of time, and universities and colleges start to grow in the area, including the fact that all this trade's happening. And as you get exposed to different cultures and languages and people's ways of thinking, that also encourages people to think in new ways. And as you expand your mind and are willing to think outside of your box, you want to know more and more and more. So education grows. Okay, if you're not ready yet, go ahead and push pause because we're moving on. Okay, another thing is that it just kind of makes sense that it would really be focused on a rebirth of looking at all things from the classical period, from Rome and from Greece, because you're in Italy. There's ruins all over the place, Roman ruins scattered throughout Italy. And if you remember back to the Roman unit, Rome got their inspiration from Greece. So now flash forward a few hundred years, you're in the Renaissance, there's these Roman ruins everywhere, and people start reflecting back on things that were happening during Greece, ancient Greek times and ancient Roman times. And it really served as an inspiration to scholars, artists, architects, all different types of people. So there's this whole Greco-Roman revival. All the styles and everything are coming back in fashion to do things from the Greece and Roman periods. Again, people are eager for knowledge as education is growing, and one of the things that they're eager to learn about is relearning classical ideas, re-looking at and re-examining Roman and Greek cultures. So that was really a fashionable thing to do during the Renaissance. You wanted a well-rounded education that included knowledge about ancient Greek and ancient Rome. And they took those classical ideas that they learned and they combined it with new ways of thinking and new points of view that they had gotten from other parts of Europe and Asia and the Middle East. And so they take something old and they're blending it with something new to create new ways of thinking and new exciting ideas and styles for architecture and art. If you're not done with this slide, then make sure you push pause because here we go. Okay, so art and literature. Medieval art and literature focused mostly on the church and salvation because remember, the Roman Catholic Church is at the height of its power during the medieval times, and all social functions, everything and throughout your daily life, tended to focus on the church. So medieval art definitely focused on church and salvation. Renaissance art, however, was different, and I'm going to tell you how in part 2. So come back and watch part 2 so we can keep going through our PowerPoint together. And don't forget, part 2, part 2, part 2. All right.